In the first video on this channel, I talked about the GMA T50 and said it was underrated. After all, its numbers are small. It weighs less than a ton, generates only 680 horsepower and has a naturally aspirated V12 with just 4 liters of displacement. Despite this, it was a sales success, showing that sometimes experience is more important than numbers. Another great example is the sales flop of the Rimac Nevera, which has awesome performance numbers, but because it's electric, it doesn't have such a good experience. However, Bugatti thinks differently and tries to provide a good experience to the driver through astronomical and perhaps exaggerated numbers. The Chiron weighs almost 2 tons and has an engine with 4 turbos, 8 liters of displacement and 16 cylinders. And let's be honest, this access is very interesting. This allows, for example, to reach speeds over 300 miles an hour, which is a bit less than 500 kilometers an hour. But let's take it easy, as there is a lot of history and luxury to cover before we get there. The name Chiron was a tribute to the French driver Louis Chiron, who raced for Bugatti before World War II. Moreover, this car came to be a successor to the Veyron, which was a world record holder and created a solid name in history. The difficulty of creating a more luxurious, more powerful and higher performing car was quite significant, and might have required a new engine. But no, Bugatti decided to double down and keep the 8-liter quad-turbo W16. However, the 9-year new technology increased its power by about 50%, jumping from 1000 horsepower to 1500. This considering the base versions of both models, as the Veyron Super Sport can reach up to 1200 horsepower and the Chiron Super Sport reaches up to 1600. Just as the W is a combination of 2 U's or 2 V's, the W16 is a combination of 2 V8s, or rather 2 VR8s, since the pistons are much closer to each other. Anyway, look at this engine block. It's beautiful, unnecessary, extravagant, it's incredible, a true masterpiece of engineering. The problem is that this engine is as powerful as it's polluting and required no less than 6 catalytic converters, some of which are even 6 times larger than those in conventional cars. Moreover, such a large engine with 4 turbos heats up, and heats up a lot. It takes 10 radiators and a flow of 800 liters of water every minute to cool this monster. I say monster because at its maximum power, the 100-liter tank is consumed in just a few minutes, and every minute 60,000 liters of oxygen are captured to feed him. Of course, this combined with the 10 radiators presented a significant aerodynamic challenge. That's why there are large air intakes both in the front and on the sides in this characteristic C-shape, which must be some reference to crazy, I guess. This same C is present in the interior, with the largest light conductor ever placed in a car. And you might find this information unnecessary, but it serves to remind you that in addition to being powerful, the Chiron is extremely sophisticated and luxurious. Although it can reach up to 420 km an hour, the first version of the Chiron was not focused on performance but rather on comfort and prestige, starting with the single piece of aluminum in the central part of the car, which supports 4 small screens with various functions such as air conditioning control. Of course, this piece could have been at least divided into a few parts, but in a car that worth over 2 million euros, every opportunity to make it more luxurious counts. Even the sound system is special, as it's made with diamond fragments, delivering a crystal clear sound. Not that I see much sense in being inside a supercar and replacing the sound of the engine with music, but apparently Bugatti customers like quieter cars. That's because one of the strong points of the evolution compared to the Veyron is the silence in the cabin, especially during cruising moments. Shortly after, Bugatti announced the sport version of the Chiron, with a very clear goal, to extract money from the customers. I mean, to bring more sportiness to the model. The problem is that, in fact, there wasn't such a significant evolution despite the addition of 400,000 euros. Even so, it received more refined aerodynamics, as well as an improvement in the torque vectoring system and a weight reduction. For the first time, a production car was using carbon fiber windshield wiper, which saved 1.36 kilograms. But other parts, such as the engine, were also revised and a total of 18 kilos was lost, which is still not much, since the final weight was 1,978 kilograms. However, in 2020, Bugatti launched the Chiron Pure Sport, a truly new car that really has a new proposition, a focus on tracks. This means that, unlike its previous version and especially its predecessor, the Veyron, it's now excellent in corners and not just in acceleration and braking. For this, it received a negative camber of 2.5 degrees and Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R tires. Besides having excellent performance on tracks, it's much cheaper than the exclusive tires of the Sport version and incomparably cheaper than the tires of the Super Sport 300 Plus version, which are currently costing an arm and a leg. The suspension system has also been improved to make it stiffer, specifically 33% stiffer at the rear and 65% at the front. The steering system was also updated to make the car more responsive, but the biggest change was in the gearbox. Legend has it that around $120 million were spent to develop a 80% Nm transmission. This allowed the gear ratios to be shortened by 15%, which made the 0 to 300 km/h of the Chiron Pure Sport more than 1 second faster than the standard and the Sport versions. Unfortunately, the transmission with shorter ratios and simpler tires caused the top speed of this version to be only 350 km/h. But considering that this is a track car, that speed is more than enough, because the most important thing in this scenario is not the top speed but rather the acceleration, which was very well developed. Another important point was the weight reduction, in which the car lost an impressive 50 kg, representing an even more impressive 2.5% reduction. Yeah, it's not much, but there is practically no more weight to shed. After all, almost everything in the car is already made of carbon fiber. Thus, the main unnecessary weight was in the hydraulic system of the movable rear wing. Therefore, it was removed and replaced with a massive fixed wing 1.9 meters wide, which, in addition to reducing weight, improves aerodynamics. With the same goal of improving aerodynamics, the wheels were redesigned to feed the diffuser and increase its efficiency, which is very important because the downforce generated at the bottom of the car does not create drag. With all this, there was an incredible gain in downforce of 50 kg. And that leads me to think that this wing is just for show. But it's a beautiful showpiece. I would even say that this is the most interesting and beautiful version of the Chiron, and without a doubt, it's my favorite. That's why I spent a few months developing this miniature. I did everything from the computer model to assembling the resin printed parts and painting, and this was the result. Not perfect, but surely unique. I'm now 16 years old, and this was one of the coolest projects I've ever had. And if you want a miniature like this, you can buy my 3D model from the links in the description, print it, assemble it, and paint it your way. And take advantage of this break to subscribe, like, and share the video. Just like the Veyron, the suffix Super Sport refers to the most extreme version of the model, with 100 extra horsepower and refined aerodynamics designed to produce drag as low as possible. To achieve this, the body was extended, gaining an extra 10 cm at the rear. This allowed for an extension of the diffuser, which resulted in a shortening of the distance between the base and the top of the rear end. And to further increase its efficiency, the exhaust tip were moved to the sides, leaving the center space of the diffuser free. At the front, the main addition was a flap that comes just below and almost to the side of the headlight. All of this basically serves to keep the air stuck to the bodywork for as long as possible and minimize drag. The result was a car capable of reaching 440 km/h or 273 mph, which is certainly impressive, but still not the much coveted and promised 300 mph. That's because Bugatti needed to extract more money for its customers. I mean, Bugatti still had one more version, the Chiron Super Sport 300 Plus, and now, yes, you can reach the 300 mph. As long as you have a track long enough, specific tires, no ice because she won't let you do it. The important thing is that the car is capable, and you will not just want to reach that speed. You will want all the exclusivity of only 30 units produced and the honor of having the characteristic two colored stripes painted on the exposed carbon fiber, which is exclusive to the 300 Plus. But what about you? Which is your favorite version of the Chiron? Remember that you can purchase my 3D model for printing a Chiron Pure Sport scale model kit and build it however you like. Link in the description. Thank you very much for your attention and see you next time.